Scotland. A few showers getting into parts of Wales as well. Again, most of these will be rain at low levels. Much of the south and the east will be dry and bright on Saturday. Look at this, 4-5 degrees. Most of us haven't seen that for a good few days. It's going to turn milder still on Sunday. This area of low pressure is moving in. It's bringing milder air, but it's also bringing strong winds and, for a time, on Sunday, some heavy snow.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking. You've spoken, I've listened, I've asked you, did you want Harry and Meghan on the roster tonight? 88% of you that responded to my poll said no, you don't. So tonight we are a H&M free zone. Instead, I want to talk about more pressing matters here in this country. The boss of Iceland, the freezer shop, not the country, says that he wouldn't mind being Prime Minister of this country one day. It got me pondering, so much is in a mess right now, isn't it? Strikes here, there and everywhere. The very sad situation of the nurses' strike today. Are more business people the answer? If we had a government that was packed full of them, would we get things sorted more effectively, quicker, better? You tell me. And we might have all seen by now that a man has been sentenced to 38 years in prison for an awful murder. We will have seen this, of course, because it was broadcast live on television. It's divided opinion, so I'm asking you, open justice it's called, cameras in courtrooms. Should we have them or not? And also today, interest rates are now at their highest level in 14 years. Some people are saying there is a housing crash around the corner. Others are saying, good, it will be a good thing for this country. Would it be? You tell me, I want your thoughts on that. And over in New Zealand, they're going to ban cigarette sales for people born after 2008. Some are saying that we should copy them and have that as a rule here too. Really? Is that what we should be doing? Banning, outlawing cigarettes? You tell me your thoughts on that. But first of all, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Good evening from the GB Newsroom. I'm Tamsin Roberts. Tens of thousands of nurses are taking part in the biggest strike in NHS history. Picket lines have been set up in England, Wales and Northern Ireland in the first of two 12-hour walkouts over pay. Staff are providing some urgent care, but routine surgery and other planned treatment is disrupted. Health Secretary Steve Barclay says the union's call for a 19% pay rise is unaffordable.
We also recognise the huge contribution that we saw from nurses during the pandemic, and that's why last year we made a special case where nurses got an extra 3% when others in the public sector did not. But we've got to balance that against what is affordable to the wider economy, and asking for a 19% pay rise way above what most viewers themselves are receiving is not affordable given the many other economic pressures that we face.
Well, ICU nurse Kelly Hopkins says they're striking not just for pay, but for their patients.
Patients aren't safe, patients aren't getting the care. At the moment, there's 2 nurses on a ward that cannot deliver that care. We're going into hospital. I came into nursing to look after my patients, to hold their hands, to look after them, to wash them, to brush their teeth when they're unable to do that. And I can't do that at the moment because there's not enough staff on the ward.
Network rail workers have voted overwhelmingly to accept a pay offer. It affects around 2,500 members of the TSSA. The RMT remains in a separate dispute with Network Rail after its members rejected an offer earlier this week. Travel editor at The Independent, Simon Calder, told us now the TSSA has reached a settlement, it may well lead to the RMT offer being accepted.
Interestingly, Andrew Haynes, the chief executive of Network Rail, has been saying that the outliers in this dispute are now the RMT union, the main rail union, that it is a good offer relative to what everything else is happening in the country, and that people should accept it. It's not going to get any better. But meanwhile, of course, the dispute with the 14 train operators goes on, and anybody who's planning to catch a train later on this evening, well, do check in advance.
Meanwhile, ground baggage handlers at Heathrow Airport have suspended planned strike action after receiving an improved pay offer. More than 400 staff members had been set to begin a 72-hour walkout tomorrow morning. The Unite union says it will now ballot its members, and other planned industrial action remains in place pending the outcome. The Prime Minister is making his first trip to Northern Ireland since taking office. Tonight, he's expected to host informal talks with political leaders in an attempt to end Stormont suspension. Rishi Sunak will also use the trip to promote the government's investment in shipbuilding in Belfast. He says the deal to build Royal Navy support vessels will create thousands of high-value jobs. The 4 boys who died after falling into a frozen lake in Solihull have been named by West Midlands Police. 8-year-old Finlay Butler, his 6-year-old brother Samuel and their cousin, 11-year-old Thomas Stewart, were taken to hospital where they died on Monday. The 4th child, who reportedly tried to save the others, has been named as Jack Johnson, aged 10. The families say they are devastated by the loss of the boys in such tragic circumstances. At least 19 children have now died in the UK from Strep A since September. The UK Health Security Agency says 16 children have died in England and 3 other deaths have been recorded in Belfast and Wales. It's understood health officials believe the number of infections has not yet peaked. The government has introduced serious shortage protocols for 3 penicillin medicines so that pharmacists can supply alternative forms to those prescribed. Authorities are continuing their search for 4 migrants believed to be missing after a boat partially deflated in the English Channel. 4 people died when a boat with 47 on board capsized off the Kent coast yesterday morning. The leader of Kent County Council says 12 of those rescued were unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who are now in the care of authorities. British officials and lifeboat services, as well as the French Navy, were all involved in the rescue operation. The Bank of England has raised its base rate from 3% to 3.5%. It's the highest level in 14 years and the 9th consecutive hike. The Chancellor says he acknowledges times are tough, but that the government's working with the Bank of England to reduce inflation. The royal family are gathered at Westminster Abbey this evening for a Christmas carol service hosted by the Princess of Wales. The Together at Christmas concert is attended by 1,800 people in a service to recognise the selfless efforts of individuals and families. The family put on a united front just hours after the second instalment of Harry and Meghan's controversial Netflix docu-series was released. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Michelle.
Thanks for that. It's awful, sad news, isn't it? To see those little boys like that. They're poor, poor families. You cannot imagine what they must be feeling in the run-up to Christmas. May those little boys rest in peace. I'm with you right through until 7 o'clock this evening. Keeping me company alongside me, we've got the former Brexit Party MEP, Ben Habib, and Kevin Craig, formerly known as Nurse Sock Guy. Only people that watch Dewbs & Co will know this reference, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you know what, you should watch Dewbs & Co more often. Anyway, his real name and title, Kevin Craig, the CEO of communications agency PLMR. In short, actually, I would say, 2 of Britain's best businessmen on this panel today.
I'll take that, Michelle.
Yeah, what a treat. One of whom, by the way, just gave me a Christmas present. I've not opened it, so I don't know if it's a good one yet, but I'm not going to tell you who just gave me a Christmas gift. I'll leave you to work that out among yourselves. Anyway, you know the drill, don't you, on Dewbs & Co. It's not just about us, it's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? The topics I'll be mentioning: do we need more business people in politics? Are we due a housing crash? Is it imminent now? And if so, would that be a good thing or a bad thing? Should we ban smoking? Literally just no smoking, done, gone, says the government. Do you like that idea or not? So we'll have that and more coming up tonight. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email, or you can tweet me at GBNews. It is a H&M free zone. I put a Twitter poll out asking you whether or not you're interested. You told me you've got better things that you want to talk about tonight. If you're sitting there, though, saying, no, I desperately want to talk about Meghan and Harry, I don't want to, but you can, so you can still email me about it, and if it's interesting, I'll read it out. By the way, you guys do make me laugh. One of the things I like about Dewbs & Co is the amount of emails that I get from you guys about my outfit each day. My favourite one tonight is John from Blackpool. Says, Michelle, you look like a Roman candle firework tonight.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to take that as a compliment, but Nigel says, Michelle, you look like you're going to a panto. If you're listening, not watching, you don't know what I'm wearing, just take my advice from I look fantastic, basically. Anyway, let's go on to our top story. Politicians. Who do you think is best suited to go into government and represent their constituencies? Does it matter the person's background? The reason that I'm asking this question is because the boss of Iceland, the freezer shop, not the country, Richard Walker, he has told a podcast that one day he wants to be a Prime Minister. He is, by the way, he's on the list to become a Tory parliamentary candidate, but he's not yet got a seat to contest. So it got me thinking, and I've got 2 of Britain's best business brains alongside me, so what better people to discuss this with? Do you think we need more business people in politics?
Well, Michelle, the answer is no, and I'll tell you why I say that. Richard Walker, who, as you said, runs Iceland. I think let's put a bit of context to this. Richard wants to get on the list of Tory MPs at the next election.
Yep.
Richard runs the firm his dad founded. So, you know, his life is certainly not typical. And how many business people are already in Parliament, we ask the GB viewers and listeners? Well, in 2015, when there's the most recent data, almost a third, 192 out of 650 MPs had a business background, OK? And that was not that much larger from 25 years before that. Interestingly, manual workers, there were 3% of people 3% of MPs elected in 2015 had a background in manual work. So business, which I think is crucial, it should be represented in Parliament, but actually we already have a lot of business people, which is great, and our current government is full of people with backgrounds in business, and they've made a Horlicks of it.
Karen has just emailed in capitals, so she means business. She says, Alan Sugar should be the Prime Minister. He would sort the country out.
What do you think of that? You used to work with him, didn't you?
You see, I actually like the premise of business people going into Parliament because I think that in a business, especially if you're an entrepreneur, so you've created it and you're not just running it, you know, don't you, a thing or two about how to get things done, cutting through red tape, being effective, being efficient, and getting the best outcomes. I do wonder and worry, though, that you can go in there as an Alan Sugar, you're full of gusto, and then once you get in and you see just how tied your hands are and all the limits and the legislations and the rules and the this, I don't know if you'd lose your Alan Sugar dust and become more like a, I don't know, like a Mickey Mouse type person. I don't know. Where do you stand on it, Ben?
Well, I think it's a more nuanced debate. I don't like nuance. I prefer to be black and white and come out with a...
We don't mind nuance.
...with a completely, you know, clear-cut answer on it. But I think that business encompasses a whole range of different activities. And, I mean, for example, if you came out of PR, no slight intended, but if you come out of PR and you go into government, I don't think that's a particularly good route. PR is obviously business. But if you, as you say, have been an entrepreneur, you've started something, you know what it's like to work in the regulatory framework, you've employed people, you know the importance of paying wages to keep staff incentivised and loyal and so on. If you understand all of those things, that's a very different kind of businessman. And I'd go further. I'd say it's not just about business. I think we need professionals from all sorts of backgrounds and more mature professionals in government. One of the things I think that's gone wrong with our parliamentary system is that both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party award seats to those candidates who have really been in the party for quite a long time. And they tend to leave university, having done perhaps PPE at Oxford, to name one such degree, which I think probably ought to be banned for the sake of the national interest. But, you know, they leave university, they go into some kind of research job in the Conservative Party, they spend a lot of time as special advisors, you know, understanding how the parliamentary system works, and then they become MPs and government ministers. And actually, they've had no real life experience. And, you know, I think I'd welcome having members of the armed forces, members of the civil service in government, members of from the National Health Service, lawyers. You know, I'd want everyone. I want society represented in government. So I'd open it up beyond just business and really look at the qualifications of every single candidate. And it's not just a question, by the way, that you're asking. It's really interesting. The Conservative Party, facing the obliteration that it is now facing in the next election, is doing a lot of soul searching at the moment about its candidate selection because it recognises it's actually got that quite wrong.
Yeah, it has. And I think you raise an interesting point about the age and maturity experience. In Scotland, the government there has actually tabled this proposal to allow people to stand as candidates age 16. What do you think to that?
I think that's a bit young, personally. I just don't think you've got the life experience to do a good job as a legislator. The average age, more or less, of MPs at Westminster is 50, and it's been constant for some time. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think 16 is too young, personally.
Yeah, because I actually think it's ludicrous. You know, you can't even get a tattoo until you're 18, so why would you be influencing policy? But the flip side to that would be, if you're a younger person, so to your point, Ben, you want more mature, older people, more experience, whatever. the older you get, the more mature you get, whatever, the more disconnected you get from the youth. So perhaps there is an argument.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't have young people, but I'd like to see a much broader mix of
16, do you think that's
No,
too young?
16's far too young. I mean, you know, personally, I wouldn't have the voting age below 21. You know,
Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't. You know, 18. I didn't know anything when I was 18. Perhaps I'm an exception. Perhaps.
But if you've got a
most.
job and you're working and you're paying income tax, so you're fueling the coffers of this government.
Well, you can do that at 16.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is if I'm working 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, why should I not be able to vote till I'm 21?
Well, I mean, that's my personal view, that you haven't really marshalled your own character. You haven't evolved into the person you're going to be. You're still very much in development mode when you're 16 through to 18.
Well, this is a great point, because let's take what you both have said. Let's look at two of the biggest decisions in recent years taken by people, shall we say, of a more mature vintage.
I know where he's going with this one.
Hang on.
Yeah,
No. The first one
bet you do. Go on.
the first one is the selection of Liz Truss as Prime Minister by a Tory party membership that was predominantly of a certain age. And yes, indeed, well predicted, if you look back to the Brexit vote, taken by a majority of my fellow citizens of a certain vintage, and if we'd have left it to the young people there, we might not be in this pickle.
And exactly right. It was the right vote. You've just made the case for it, Kevin. Thank you.
It's been a disaster.
We haven't got Brexit, Kevin. If we want to go down that particular cul-de-sac of a debate.
I think your name's on the charge sheet there, my friend.
Oh, my goodness.
Well,
let's have this out. My name is on the charge sheet. My name is on the charge sheet for what in particular, Kevin?
The disaster.
Right, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. They're going to talk about this charge sheet in a second, because I've got to go.
Well, my charge sheet is full of Remainers who've frustrated the biggest democratic mandate this country ever had.
Where's that bus?
Stood in the way of Brexit.
Where's that bus?
Hang on,
stood in the way of Brexit, argued against the national interest.
Where's the bus?
Fettered our government.
Where's the NHS money?
The 350 million.
The
350 million a week has been spent and more on the NHS by increments since then.
You've been on the source bed.
There was 192 extraordinary comment. £192 billion spent on the NHS last year. 2016, 130 billion. There has been an extra 60 billion spent on the NHS. So if you want to have that debate, this is not about Brexit. This is about Remainers.
Stop shouting.
This is about Remainers standing in the way of the biggest democratic mandate and frustrating it.
It's about the quality of decisions made. We were talking about decisions made by the people and their ages.
No, you said that I was on the charge sheet.
I gently pointed out.
You said I was on the charge sheet, and you vilified elderly people. That's what you did, Kevin.
I didn't.
That's precisely what you did.
I pointed out that the decision to leave the European Union was taken by a larger proportion of older people than younger people.
So what?
True?
So what? It was a democratic process. People like you, when you don't get the result you want from democracy, simply attack the democratic process. I've had that since 2016. We've had 4 votes on Brexit. We had the referendum, then we had the 2017 election, then we had the 2019 Euro elections, and then we had the 2019 general election. Every single one of those elections voted for Brexit.
Brexit's not going very well. It's just the point.
We haven't got Brexit because of people like you, Kevin, who stood and frustrated the United Kingdom in moving forward as an independent sovereign state.
I'm waiting to see it work.
Well,
but we haven't got it.
Well, whose fault is that?
That's your fault.
No, it's
your name on the charge sheet for that. People like you, people who come on programmes like this.
Those who are listening, Michelle, will see Ben pointing at me. He's getting quite irate.
Right.
I am irate, absolutely, because you said my name is on the charge sheet for absolutely no reason.
I'm in the middle of this. He says his name's on the charge sheet. Someone said guilty this, not guilty this. Some say Brexit's happened, it hasn't happened. I had my popcorn out. I stayed out of that one. I'll leave you to be the judge. You tell me your thoughts, and I'll see you back in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Ooh, hello, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. If you watched the end of that last part, it was a bit feisty, wasn't it? We're talking about Brexit. I think it's safe to say I've got a passionate Brexiteer and a passionate Remainer alongside me. Wasn't supposed to be talking about Brexit, but you know what? We roll with it. That's live TV. I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Alongside me, Brexit MEP, Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib and Kevin Craig, who's the CEO of the communications agency PLMR. I'm supposed to be talking about open justice and cameras in court, and I will do in a second, but the conversation didn't actually end during the break, so it ramped up a notch. So do you want to have a couple of minutes, you two, getting it off your chest, the Brexit thing?
I've got nothing to get off my chest other than saying this debate was about the decisions taken by people of different ages, their qualification and skills. We started off talking about MPs and their age, and then we moved into me saying that the vote to leave the European Union was disproportionately achieved by our elder fellow citizens, at which point Ben has lost his rag.
Right. But I think the point was we were talking about Brexit, wasn't we? And you were saying it's not yet been done and we're not really where we're supposed to be.
I didn't, by the way, just for the record, I didn't lose my rag.
You said F-word off air.
You didn't.
Yeah, well, we're not off air now. We're on air.
I didn't lose my rag when you cited the age group that predominantly voted in favour of Brexit. Yeah. I lost my rag when you said that I was on the charge seat, as if voting for Brexit, campaigning for Brexit, supporting the biggest democratic mandate the country's ever had, requires me to be on some kind of charge sheet. You may disagree with Brexit. I would hold you to be wrong, and we can have a civil debate about that. But the minute you say someone's on a charge seat, you're personalising...
It's a figure of speech.
It's not a figure of speech. It's an ad hominem attack. And you, at your age...
You're very sensitive.
I'm not very sensitive.
You are.
I'm not at all sensitive.
You are. I expect more.
You're an elderly gentleman. You ought to know better.
51, that's middle youth.
Right.
Well, you look older than that.
Oi, you two, pack it in. I was actually going to have a couple of minutes talking about Brexit, but evidently that's not going to happen.
He can't do it. He resorts to personal abuse.
Not really. You started it.
You two, I am gonna sit one of you over there in a minute and the other one over there in a minute. I can tell you.
Doesn't like it up here.
Instead, pack it in. Instead, I'll stick with the charge sheet theme and I'll go to the story that I was supposed to be talking about, which is open justice, because a man that did indeed have a charge sheet against him was the fella that's just been sentenced to 38 years in jail for killing a 35-year-old woman. Now, you'll all be familiar with this story, I'm sure, but it's divided opinion about whether or not cameras should be in courtrooms. Of course, for example, we broadcast that sentencing here. It's called open justice. Where do you stand on it? Kevin, are you in favour of open justice or not?
Yes, I am. I'm really happy that the public can see sentences being delivered. I think it opens up the justice system and I think it brings home the import and the seriousness of what's happened. Although sometimes it's very painful to see it and hear and see what the judges have to say. I think it's bringing home to people more powerfully and urgently the need to get legal reform better. Why was this killer allowed out? Why did the justice system let this lady and her family down? I'm all for it. As for whether or not live televising of verdicts leads to calls for the death penalty, if it does.
Or for more harsher sentencing.
Or for harsher sentences. I don't mind harsher sentences. I don't mind more focus on victims, because victims are my #1 concern in the justice system. But I think it's good, and I think it is to be welcomed, and I have no problem with it.
So you're a backer of open justice, Ben Habib.
I mean, I agree with Kevin that
Whoa,
you know, I agree with
pause?
Kevin. I agree.
Go on, Ben.
This isn't Brexit.
No, it's true. Go on.
I agree with Kevin that you know, harsh sentences for harsh crimes, and this crime was absolutely abominable. The rape and then murder of this young girl, and 38 years in prison is absolutely right. And I also think it's absolutely right, just change the subject marginally, for Dominic Raab as Justice Secretary to be able to call in parole board recommendations for the release of, you know, criminals who've been convicted of serious crimes, and to have the right to step in and block those releases, because this chap actually should have been in jail when he committed this crime. So, I mean, I'm in favour of all of that. Where I would disagree with Kevin is I think justice should probably be behind closed doors, because what you don't want is the court of public opinion somehow influencing what should be a, you know, literally a blind process. You know, you want the court to be making its decisions without the pressure of any third parties or, you know, in this case, the public. So I'm not, you know, I can see the argument for having cameras in court, but I think if I come down one way or the other, it would be for justice to remain away from that kind of public scrutiny at that point.
Yeah, and this is quite a divisive topic, because a lot of people will say transparency can only be a good thing and you learn about the justice system and all the rest of it. But then I guess I worry a little bit that the sentencing judges, etc., almost going to inadvertently turn into, like, kind of, not stars, I don't mean stars, but sometimes if you know you're on telly, obviously not me, but it can go to your head a little bit.
Well, we'll take your word for that, Michelle.
No, but do you know what I mean? It can. I think, I don't know, like, it's one thing saying something and all you've got is a court reporter kind of writing it down and transcribing it. Yeah. When you're being watched, seen, your body language is being judged and scrutinised and then commented upon afterwards, and they'll read those comments, those judges, I suspect. Yeah. I just don't know, like, to your point, are they then going to alter their behaviour the next time because they know they're now a TV person?
I think it's a fair point, and however, I just think that the justice system is our system. It belongs to the people. It's supposed to be on behalf of both the monarch and the people of this country, and I am just for as much transparency and insight as possible. And I think if people, somehow the message on crime's not getting through in this country, right? The crime is on the up. The investment in the judiciary, the prison system, etc., all needs to be looked at. And I think the more that the severity of these sentences, the more of the impact these crimes have that can be communicated, I think it can be a good thing. I know that you're alluding to celebrity judges and whether they start getting into the Hollywood side of it, but I think that's a risk worth taking.
Yeah, and John's messaged in saying the sentence given out, we're talking about that case of the guy that's just been given his tariff. John's saying, I think the sentence given for that killing was not good enough. It was open and shut, says John. The death penalty should be brought back. And I guess this is my point, because what we see, we almost see like the end 5 minutes of that film, so to speak. If you imagine this whole process, you get literally the last scene, the sentencing. So I think then what happens is we all then turn into these armchair experts, don't we, going, yeah, he definitely should have killed him. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but lots of people are writing in saying that you think that the sentence was too lenient. And by the way, another aspect that I found quite interesting to this story was that some in the Labour side of the camp now are saying that it should be mandatory if someone's up for sentencing, that they have to be brought to the courtroom, because this fella wouldn't turn up to the court for his sentencing.
Disgraceful.
I know it is.
That is disgraceful.
His representative said that he didn't want to, quote, relive the experience by looking at some of the CCTV footage. But actually, quite frankly, I would have dragged him there and I would have made him, I would have sat him down and I would have made him not only watch that CCTV footage, but watch it in front of the family of that daughter, that cousin, that auntie, whatever, that he has then taken away with his disgusting, perverted sense of entitlement. So I don't know how you would enforce that suggestion, because what you're going to do, tie people to a plank and carry them in, like what? I don't know how you'd enforce it, but the principle is certainly one that I like. Right, I have to take a break now. When I come back, I want to talk to you about the interest rate rise today. What do you think it will mean for the housing market? Some are saying that a house price crash is on the way. Others are saying if it happens, it would be a good thing. Would it? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, the former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib and Kevin Craig, who's the CEO of the communications agency PLMR. Lots of you guys getting in touch. We've just been talking about open justice cameras in courtroom. Someone's written in now and just said, actually, Graham says it's the live TV of Parliament that has raised big public issues. You don't say what those issues are, though, Graham, so I'd be fascinated to hear your insight on that. I found Parliament TV fascinating, mainly because have you seen some of the debates where there's literally probably 3-4 people in the chamber when they're discussing what I would call important issues like the vaccine harm? I'm not going to labour on that because I'll get an intake of breath and we'll start on a tangent, but I found it fascinating. What are your issues with Parliament being broadcast? Peter said, the phrase you were just looking for there, Michelle, was playing to the crowd. Yes, that is exactly the phrase that I was looking for. Talking about, you know, this Labour suggestion of forcing people to attend court for their sentencing. Tyann, I think that's how you say your name. You say people should always have the right not to attend court. As much as people, including him, say that they might not like it, justice is not and never should be a blood sport. Interesting. And David says, lawyers won't ever want the death penalty, Michelle, because quite frankly, it would put them out of a job. I don't know, actually. Have you seen how long some people in death row are on appeals? It goes on for years and years and years. So actually, I think the lawyers would probably do all right out of it. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming in. GBviews at gbnews.uk is the email address. Now, today we've got, well, I would say more bad news. Some people might think it's a good thing, but the base interest rate has increased again to 3.5%, making it the highest in 14 years. This has led to a lot of conversations about whether or not there's going to be a housing crash? And if there is, would that be a good thing? Ben Habib, you run a property company. Where do you stand on it?
Well, I don't think anyone should want a housing crash. I can understand why people want house prices to cease rising and perhaps even come down. But a housing crash would be a disaster because you would have a domino effect through the economy. You would have bank loans going sour, banks going bust, government bailouts being required. When banks go bust, a whole load of other businesses suffer, and you get a widespread collapse in the economy. So a housing crash is not in anyone's interest. I understand why people want house prices to slow down, perhaps even come down a bit. I mean, the really interesting thing for me here is that we've, in fact, had rampant inflation for 12 years. You know, that's going to sound odd to people watching the programme, but we have. We had rampant asset price inflation at the beginning of the 2010s through to 2015, 2016, as a result of the government printing money to rescue the banks first time round, devalued cash, forced up asset prices, and ripped away, actually, the ability for the working and middle classes to buy their own home, and thereby ripped away aspiration. What we're seeing now is consumer prices going up as a result of supply-side problems. A breakdown in supply chains caused by lockdowns. Lockdowns effectively put oil and gas production on hold. Reserves were shut down. Manufacturing processes were closed down.
So you wouldn't have had any lockdowns?
And I wouldn't have had any lockdowns. We can have that debate, and I can just finish the point that I'm making. So what we've got is supply-side inflation, and actually you don't control supply-side inflation by raising interest rates. And this is going to be quite an unconventional view I'm about to espouse. But the reason I think we're really raising interest rates is not to curb inflation. It's to ensure that we can keep up with the Federal Reserve, who are raising interest rates. Because if we don't raise interest rates, as they do, we'll see pound collapse and we'll see more inflation being imported into the United Kingdom. So it's the prevention of something getting worse rather than the... What we've got is a fundamentally broken economy, and I think the Bank of England needs to be very careful in the way that it raises interest rates.
I was just about to say, I'm going to Kevin, but before I do, what point do you think it should stop? We're at 3.5% now. Where do you think stop now? Or?
So you've got to stop looking at what we're doing here, and you've got to just look at what's happening in the States. And the States, basically the Fed is saying it's reaching the top of its interest rate cycle, and I think we will reach the top at about the same time.
Kevin Craig.
Well, the question was about house prices, and I think, you know, with all due respect, Ben, you're a property professional, and your view is going to be nuanced, I think, by the fact that it's certainly not in your interest for there to be a house price crash. It probably doesn't help your business model. I might be wrong on that. And I think the average price of property in the last 25 years is very significantly out of kilter with the increases in other asset classes and goods. And so an average person, an average young person leaving university or whatever, has got a much reduced chance now of buying their own home than in the past. And that is a source of concern. So nobody wants a crash, but a flattening of house prices or a reduction over time, whilst some people might lose wealth that they think they've built up, I think that would be a good thing because housing's too expensive. And we have massive land banking in this country where developers are holding it back and they won't release it till they get the planning permissions they want, while their balance sheet and share prices rocket. And people are fed up and they're worried about the next generation. So not a crash, but radical action to address house prices in this country is necessary.
A slur correction. Ben,
which is what I was advocating.
Yeah, so there you go. We got there. We found some agreement. But I'm just about to inflame it all again. I can't help myself. Kevin was just saying, would you have not had any lockdowns then?
I think lockdowns were a fundamental mistake. We knew right at the beginning, actually, that the virus targeted older people and vulnerable people more than anyone else. The average age of death with people who died with the virus, not necessarily as a result of the virus, but with the virus, is still higher than the average life expectancy. So it was an old age problem. And actually what we needed to do was have a much more targeted response to controlling the virus, not a widespread economic shutdown, which is what we had. And the entire developed world, and therefore the entire world, is now suffering the economic and health problems that have resulted from lockdown. Lockdown was a fundamentally failed policy, and it should never be allowed to happen again.
Amen to that. He's right, isn't he, Kevin?
No, it's total nonsense.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know a single respected medical professional that shares that view. It was.
I do.
Well, I know a few.
Hang on.
Oh, go on, go on then. Go on, Kevin.
We needed to, at the time, take. There's a lot of hindsight going on here.
No hindsight.
Hang on. I didn't interrupt you on that. And so I think that the idea that there was no lockdown necessary and what that would have done to the health service, I think, is just ridiculous. But that's my view.
Kevin, look at the health service now. 7.5 million people on the waiting list, 14-week average waiting period.
10 minutes ago, look at the NHS now. 10 minutes ago, you were telling me about, look at the billions that have been pumped into the NHS.
They have.
You just said it's rubbish.
I did.
What
I said was rubbish was your allegation.
No, you didn't. You said specifically...
£350 million a week was on the side of the bus, and that hadn't gone into the NHS. And what I was addressing was that incredibly false statement that you made, because actually the NHS funding has gone up much, much more than £350 million a week
said the NHS
since we Brexited. The NHS is in a fund. I'm afraid you're incredibly illogical. Just because money has been spent on the NHS doesn't mean the NHS is necessarily functioning. It has had a huge amount of money thrown at it, but it is a broken system for many reasons which we can debate, if you like, including the lockdown impact on cardiovascular disease, which went untreated, undiagnosed and untreated, cancer, which went undiagnosed and untreated, and a whole host of other elective treatments which were ignored. And now what we've got, as a result of lockdown, is 7.5 million people waiting 14 weeks versus 4 million people waiting 7 weeks before lockdowns took place.
Well,
and there is a cause and effect relationship there.
Right, a very brief response.
Well, the brief point is a huge amount of that is due to insufficient funding and reform
of
the NHS. Hang on, yes it is. And that's my view. And the idea that lockdowns were not necessary in that crisis, I just find it ridiculous.
Well, I'll tell you someone that wouldn't agree with that, by the way, because I do need to go to a break in a second. You're saying about hindsight, and you're saying about, specialists, medical specialists or whatever.
Yeah.
There was a concept called the Great Barrington Declaration that wasn't hindsight. It was created at the
4,000
time.
epidemiologists and professors and well-educated people from across the world.
It was created at the time, and it was all about what they call targeted focused protection, which was all about protecting those people that were the most vulnerable and allowing the economy to continue, personally speaking. And I accept that I'm not a medical professional, but I don't think that strategy and any other similar to it was given enough of a focus and enough of a consideration. Do you? You tell me. Right, I'm going to have a quick break. When I come back, I'll have some more of your responses, because lots of you have been getting in touch for the show tonight. And I also want to ask you whether or not smirking should be banned. Every time I say smirking, I think some of you might misunderstand my accent and think I'm saying smirking. I'm doing this, the smirking variety. Should it be banned? You tell me, and I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Alongside me until 7 o'clock tonight, the former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib and Kevin Craig, who's the CEO of the communications agency PLMR. We just got onto the lockdown topic a second ago, just before the break. Chris says, Michelle, well, what if we didn't lock down and 2 million people had died? And that's the thing, Chris, you know, no one really knows how many lives were saved by locking down or not. Doug says, look at the uproar when they didn't cancel the Liverpool Euro football match at Aintree. It's pure hindsight rubbish again from GB News. Doug, what I'm referring to, the Great Barrington Declaration, that's not hindsight. That was a principle that was created relatively close to the start of this that I'm saying didn't really get the focus it deserved. Ben perhaps may agree with that. Kevin perhaps would disagree with that. Each to their own. We have different views. That's what it's about. Philip, I'll end on your view, though, mainly because I agree with it, quite frankly. He says, lockdown was a total disaster and we're now in a complete mess because of that. As I said, I'll blatantly admit it. I agree. You know, you sensible folk, you. Right, let's talk smoking, shall we? There's been some tough new anti-smoking laws brought in New Zealand. The government there have basically banned anyone that was born after 2008 from ever being able to buy cigarettes, even when they become an adult. And apparently, over in this country, many people would support something similar. A YouGov poll found that 57% would back that exact same sort of ban. How weird. Why would you want Rishi Sunak to tell you that you can't smoke?
How weird. No, I thought you were going to say how wise of our fellow citizens that we are gradually over time realising how futile, pointless, expensive and awful cigarettes are.
Agreed, but if you choose to smoke, then what's it got to do with Rishi Sunak or whoever the Prime Minister would be at the time?
Well, the state, Rishi Sunak in this example, there is the point is that the state does not want to facilitate smoking, right? So it doesn't want to make it easier for people to smoke. One of the things there's two things here. One thing I'm ashamed of and one I'm proud of. I'm ashamed that when I was younger, on and off for a decade, I smoked. I don't know what I was doing at the time. It's embarrassing and awful. And I'm very proud that a few years ago at work, one of the things I did was work with Cancer Research UK, and we got cigarette packets in this country following what had happened in Australia, turned into plain packaging, therefore scientifically discouraging kids from smoking. That's great. Why should the government facilitate the sale of cigarettes?
Who's advocating that? Who's suggesting the government should facilitate the sale of cigarettes?
Well, Michelle is questioning the wisdom of our good fellow citizens.
Yeah. But not banning it is not facilitating the sale of it.
It's de facto facilitating.
Why? Because it's legal.
Well, yeah.
You think something not being illegal is state facilitation?
I know you're a libertarian, but what's wrong with a government saying to people...
But
what's wrong with government saying to people, guys, smoking is dangerous and expensive?
But why not ban alcohol? People die of alcohol poisoning. We have real issues with alcohol. Talk about mental health issues. Alcohol facilitates that. Would you ban alcohol?
There's an argument that alcohol consumed moderately and safely.
Yeah, and I have the odd cigar. I have the odd cigar. That's not going to kill me. Why should I be banned from having that?
Well, it's not good for you, is it?
Yeah, but so nor is alcohol, nor is excessive sugar consumption, nor is excessive fat consumption, nor is the absence of exercise. None of that's good for you.
So what's
so
bad?
Would you have a government that dictates how much exercise you do, what you eat, when you go to sleep, making sure you get 8 hours a night?
So
where do you stop this?
You're on the... Just to clarify here, Ben, I'll answer your question. I'll answer your question. I'm going to say that, you know, you're arguing here with the British people in the survey, not me. I'm saying.
But you agree
here,
with that 57%?
I do, yeah. And my point
Are they
is.
mostly older people or younger people?
Well, let's not go there again. The point is.
God, don't open that can of worms. We've only got about 5 minutes left.
This is just about
People
government.
Up in fisticups to open that
Government's trying to help their citizens to do the right thing. That's all it is.
This is about top-down state intervention, micromanagement of people's lives, the incessant stripping away of our right to make decisions for ourselves.
What about seatbelts? Was it good that we made them legal back in the day? Would you be against that? Seatbelts?
I would be against seatbelts, yeah. I was not in favour of enforcing wearing seatbelts. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You are now trained, drilled into putting a seatbelt on, as am I. We get in the car, we do it naturally, we don't complain. But I am against this incessant move by the state to tell us what to do. If you walk out of Paddington Station up towards GB News, every step that you take tells you, take one step at a time. Don't look at your mobile phone. If you're disabled, go back and take the lift. You're halfway up the flipping steps.
Does that worry?
So how do you go back and take...
Does that sort of stuff worry you?
It does. It's the dumbing. It's the infantilizing of the population. It's stripping away, subliminally, your ability to make decisions yourself. That's what's going on here.
I worry about the NHS, police, crime,
well, you
big
don't
stuff. Why
really
do you worry about
that
signs?
much. You don't really worry that much about the NHS because it didn't seem to concern you that lockdowns caused the 7.5 million...
Well, you think you know better than every medical expert in the country.
I don't think I know better.
Maybe we should consult property experts on how to reform the NHS system. Should we?
Well,
I think better.
I didn't say I know better. What I did say was that you're, going back to the NHS debate, that the assumption that spending more money is going to resolve the problem is a fundamentally wrong one, because actually the NHS has had a huge amount of extra money thrown at it since the £350 million a week claim was made. That was the point I was making. Yeah. But I'm not advocating that I've got a solution to the NHS's problems. It has got multiplicity of problems which do need resolving. That is for sure. Even Wes Streeting, who perhaps is someone you favour because he comes from, the Labour Party. Even Wes Streeting acknowledges now that the NHS needs fundamental reform. Perhaps he's doing that for electoral purposes, so he appeals to the electorate in the forthcoming election.
Anyway, let's not have, let's stop telling people what to do. Let's not make seatbelts legal.
You just literally advocated that.
I'm being sarcastic because Ben, is saying that he wouldn't have made a measure which is seatbelt compulsory use. He wouldn't be in favour, so that means he's not in favour of the lives that have been saved as a result. And I don't understand that as public policy.
Kevin, there's 7 million adults that smoke in this country, and many of them will do so because of choice. Aren't you worried that if this government has the ability to then go, right, that vice, smoking, because everyone, unless you're really quite thick, you know that smoking is not good for your health. I mean, you just do. So if you choose to smoke knowing the health consequences, it's your personal choice. So if the government bans that vice, what next? Alcohol? Sugar?
Enforcement of exercise?
No.
Where do you stop?
You've got to
just tell me quickly, where do you stop? Because I'm almost out of time for my show.
The cigarette, we're talking about cigarettes. No one's talking about anything else.
I am. I'm asking you, where after cigarettes then? If you're cool with them banning that, just quickly,
well,
where else?
I think you're scaring people unnecessarily, because this is just about sensible policy on cigarettes.
Are you sitting at home now absolutely scared out of your wits? I suspect that you're not. I suspect that you're a little bit tougher than old Kevin Craig gives you credit for. Anyway, I've got to say, gents, I've very much enjoyed the show. Who's this saying, if you ban smoking, it'll go underground? I tend to agree with you. Many others saying, Jim says, if you ban smoking, then what's next? It'll be junk food. Yes, I think that you are absolutely right.
It's the British public, Michelle. Sorry to interrupt. This is the survey.
Someone else says if the government tries to ban smoking, they'll take legal action against the government. But I've got to end now. Kevin, Ben, thank you very much for your time. I've appreciated the show. Thanks for your company at home. Next time, I'm going to wrap these two. I'm going to put earmuffs on, bubble wrap around myself, just so that I can suit myself in the middle. Anyway, Nigel Farage is up next. Nigel, good evening. What have you got for us?
Good evening. The first exclusive interview with the skipper that picked up 31 people in the English Channel yesterday. And we'll look at Harry and Meghan, part 2 of Netflix. We'll ask, can they sink any lower than this? All of that coming up in a few moments. But first, we need to find out just how cold is it going to be in the next couple of days.
I'm Alex Deacon, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Milder weather is on the way, but it's going to be a frosty Friday with some snow likely across Scotland. Could be heavy in places as well and may cause some disruption, particularly on Friday morning's rush hour through the central belt. This is the culprit. Doesn't look much, does it? A fairly weak area of low pressure, but these weather fronts moving in will be bringing some wet weather, hitting that cold air. It could provide some heavy snow later tonight. Still a few wintry showers over northern Scotland and for eastern England, where things could be quite icy, and some mist and fog patches reforming this evening, which could be quite dense. But for most, it's clear, and it is very cold, especially in the south. Actually, it won't be quite as cold across the northwest compared to recent nights, because here that wet weather is moving in. Some heavy snow over the Highlands, and then through the morning that could well slip through the central belt of Scotland, especially for that morning rush hour. We could see a few centimetres of snow for a time before it then starts to turn back to rain as we go into the afternoon. But the potential for some disruption as that wintry weather hits Scotland during tomorrow. If you